This is Dave Douglas. This is the Greenleaf Music Podcast, a noise from the deep, and that is the music of Kate Gentile. Kate's a drummer, percussionist, composer based in Brooklyn, and she's involved in a lot of really interesting new music projects coming out of the scene in Brooklyn and around the world. I was thrilled to be able to invite her to play on my new recording here at Greenleaf, Engage, and she sounds great on that, but I wanted to ask her about her own quite complex and interesting compositions, her writing, her concepts, her bands, and also her side musician projects. I also wanted to get a solid confirmation on how to pronounce her name, so we talked about all of that and a lot more. Just to remind you, you can email me directly about this show at podcast@greenleafmusic.com. And you can also subscribe to Greenleaf Music through Bandcamp. Please check it out. You can get there through our site at greenleafmusic.com, and you'll get access to our entire catalog, including exclusive music just for subscribers. It's a sustainable way that we're supporting new music and musicians, building a community, and keeping this idea of documenting creative music alive. And we hope you'll join us. That's greenleafmusic.com, and thanks. And here's the interview with Kate Gentile. Thanks for listening. Kate Gentile, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for saying my name correctly.
There is curiosity about that, isn't there?
Yeah, it's Gentile.
And now we have cleared that up. But, yeah, let's just leave that, right? We'll just put that there.
Great.
We were listening to a track from your album Mannequins from 2017 called Unreasonable Optimism. All lowercase, and in case you were wondering, but that's the correct pronunciation. You've been now with a lot of groups on a lot of different records, and there's a thing about the music that, first of all, it's always very difficult to talk about, but second of all, there's just challenges to this music. And we can start off by talking about the music that you write and play. It's not the main attribute to it, but it's difficult.
Sure.
And there's a musicianship thing going on. And I was asking you in the run-up to getting to talk to you about it, sort of for influences or where it came from or your background and how you got to this place where you're writing such complex scores. Do you feel like the musicianship question is as central to your work as maybe I'm making it out to be, or am I misreading?
Well, there's a couple things. One is that I think the farther down the rabbit hole you go, and this could just mean music that you're listening to, you start listening to crazier and crazier music, your ears crave more things that push your ears. So I definitely feel that sometimes, like, how do I get this thing that has that feeling for me? And maybe that means finding some kind of rhythmic feel, like Unreasonable Optimism is, the entire tune is 7 against 6 or 6 against 7 in a couple parts. It flips. And a lot of that comes from just, I'm trying to get at a different feeling because my ears crave it. But then I think about why, and I think the musicianship thing you were asking me about, we had been talking about Eastman, and I mentioned when I was there, the theory department and the oral skills program that you have to go through is like really rigorous, like sight, singing, rhythmic modulations, and tonal modulations all at once in alto clef, in like all the possible things you could ever have to do.
I can hear that tune is totally notated in alto clef.
Oh, yeah. Good ears.
Thank you.
I was hoping you'd catch that. So
no, but right. So it's about being introduced to those skills, and then using them to go to this place where you want to go further than the things you're listening to. You
Right.
said down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So if you start out from a place where you're, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, nobody asked me to play 6 against 7 or 7 against 6 when I was coming up. Nobody mentioned any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, nobody asked me to. It's the same thing. It's totally for my. It's just, oh, I want to try doing this. So.
And do you feel like when you write something like that the exigency of actually physically learning it is part of the process?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote out a lot of exercises for myself to work on playing it, different ways of orchestrating those kinds of things at the drum set.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy the aspect of this stuff that is to make me better, or they're almost like etudes for me in some ways, but not sounding like etudes, like they're compositions still.
Well, maybe you begin writing by thinking about different new kinds of challenges or ways of connecting rhythmic or melodic elements, and then that becomes a challenge to yourself, and then that becomes the piece.
Yeah,
Which is, I guess, what an etude is, but etude, sometimes people use the word and it's sort of disparaging.
Yeah, it can be.
Like it's a put down.
I mean, one way of, I think people think like an exercise on an instrument, but it can also be an exercise in composing. So, distinction there.
Yeah, but it sounds like in your case, and I think I'm still in the same subject area, that it's both, that it's the composing and the physical playing.
Yeah, totally.
Coming from the spiritual place of how do I drive myself to a new place?
Yeah.
With material that I want to hear. And then you have to teach yourself to hear it.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is maybe something that the education you got at Eastman sort of showed you the way to think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
You think that's accurate, or?
Yeah, or even just knowing all the stuff that seems crazy to be able to do, you can teach your brain to hear anything. And I don't think you have to go to music school to do that either. I think it can just happen from listening to stuff.
Yeah,
like anyone.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I shouldn't be overemphasizing the music school because, of course, you're originally from Buffalo, New York, so that says everything right there, doesn't it?
Does it?
Well, the lake snow effect, and you get like 2 feet of snow.
Yep,
So.
yep.
There's a thing. There's musicians from Buffalo.
Yeah.
And you don't really identify as that.
Morton Feldman, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, I stayed in Rochester after I was old enough to have my own apartment, so...
And that's where Eastman is, so you just went down the New York State Thruway.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then did you move to New York directly from there, from Eastman?
No, I actually lived in Toronto for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of music up there, too.
Yeah.
You weren't in school there.
No.
Yeah. So what I have heard is that you also started coming to New York and going to the School of Improvisational Music workshops, Ralph Alessi and...
Yeah, so I went while I was at Eastman over the summer, I think between my junior and senior year, 2007. And then when I moved here in 2011, I moved in June, and then I went to SIM that I think it started during June. So it was like right when I moved to New York.
Oh, great.
It was sort of like jump-starting everything, meeting a whole bunch of awesome musicians and being in the right mindset, thinking about music and improvising right away. So that was
Is that
great.
where you met Chris Speed from Squirrel Records?
No. When did I meet? I can't remember when I met Speed. Oh, yes, I do remember meeting Chris Speed. There's this beautiful moment on a 90-degree day. There's something about fire hydrants and sprinklers. We were at Shapeshifter, and then I met him at Shapeshifter at a gig. I just remember it was a beautiful conversation or a way to meet somebody I wish I had a specific story. I thought I was going to be able to think of it.
When
Now
I think
can't.
of Chris, I always think of fire hydrants and sprinklers. Was there a dog involved in this story? Or
No, we were just talking. I thought it was going to be a story. It's not. It's not.
Well,
I can't
I'm glad
remember
you
enough
met
detail.
Chris, and that this, his label is giving a lot of people a platform to get this music out.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's on Bandcamp, and I encourage people to find it and listen to it. Why don't we listen to a little bit more music? There's this track that's called Alchemy Melt, and it says with tilt, but it's not tilt brass.
It can
when
be
you
whatever.
Say with tilt, is that just an attitudinal?
All these titles are pretty abstract, and they can mean what you want them to mean. Some of them are anagrams or from lists of words where, I put them together and they felt right. Or some of them have like secret meanings. It's sort of just whatever you want it to mean. There is a poker phrase that I learned after I made it on tilt. Do you know what that is?
No.
I think people use it to express when they get really pissed off about something, like, I'm really like on tilt right now. But I think it also has to do with playing your cards in a way when you think like you're on a lucky streak and it makes you play differently.
Oh. Huh.
I'm not totally sure, but there's something like that. But I didn't know that when I titled it.
Okay, so the title is abstract. The music is abstract, would you say, also?
Yeah, it's definitely like it's abstract in the sense that it's not tied to a non-music subject.
Okay, makes sense. I think that's a good definition of abstraction in music, that it's not tied to anything outside the music, and also the way that you write what you're describing of, working very nakedly with these elements, very sort of, this is just the bare bones idea that I'm challenging myself to hear, and then going from there to create this larger piece. And knowing that you also make the visual art that goes on your album covers, and I'm here seeing a whole bunch of these pieces. Is there an analog in there?
Yeah, I definitely. I'm a pretty visual thinker sometimes, or at least it's tied to how I hear things, like with textures and improvising. A lot of the time, improvising, I will think of a visual analog to what the sound is. But then when I compose, I think about sort of like taking the things you would improvise in a sort of like a free improv scenario and kind of clarifying what they are. Like in some ways, free jazz can be more complex than any of this stuff people are writing. But like if you think about what the content actually ends up being a lot of the time and what it achieves. Yeah. So if you were to actually transcribe,
also the formal structures can be complex, and that's a misunderstood element as well, I think.
Yeah, and if you can actually accurately transcribe something, but then like that you would improvise from yourself, and then get a whole band to play it, it's different than just one person improvising in a moment. Might not, like, it has a different effect when it's composed. It's always a different feeling when it's composed, but that could be a reason to do it.
I want to talk some more about that, but get to some music first. But just to circle back on the visual art itself that you make, which is not always collage, but some collage, like the cover of Mannequins is a collage.
Yeah.
But there's no like specific relationship to musical pieces, or would you say that there is? Like the way that you put those pieces together, is it a similar process for you in your creative thinking?
I wouldn't say that I think it's one of those things like in art where you ideally can make something that people can find things in or see connections in, but it's not so direct that it's forced on them. Like you let it happen on their end.
Right.
I mean, the content
Fair enough.
The content in this case is pretty generic. I mean, it's a heart, on the cover.
Yeah, but it's made in it's
right. I'm just
specialized way.
I'm just saying there's a lot of ways you could, heart in music.
I don't mean the analog after the fact. I mean like more. I guess I'm trying to ask you about your work process. How do you transfer the creativity inside your mind and your soul into a final result? And do you think that the process in music is similar to the process you use in your visual art?
I guess probably, but it's
too mysterious to really.
Yeah, if I knew the answer to what you're talking about, I would be so far ahead of myself.
And maybe
like we all would.
Better off not knowing, but
yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because everybody works so differently, and everybody talks about how they work so differently, and putting those things together, I just find really fascinating. And having thought a lot about my own process, when someone is also a visual artist, I just feel like I have to ask.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a connection. It's hard to say exactly what it is.
Seeing the way that you're making your work and hearing you describe the way you make your music work, from small pieces, sewing them together out of little curious bits of things that grab you in ways that you might like to hear yourself play, but aren't quite sure what it is. Then you have to figure out what it is and then put it down and hear the pipes clanking in the background, and then
I think maybe one of the similarities is that it's very different every time. Like sometimes it starts with a larger idea, like, sorry, my heater's really loud. But
I love it.
It should stop in a minute.
We don't even have to put music on now.
Yeah, so. Great. Like sometimes it starts with like a larger idea, like a form. Sometimes the visual stuff starts with a larger idea, like a positive and negative space of the whole thing once it's done. But then maybe I'm filling in sections of it with detail. Or sometimes, like writing, it starts with a baseline. Sometimes with art, it starts with a really specific thing, but I don't know what the rest of it's going to be. Or sometimes it's like, I want to make something that's like a mixture of like paint and string, Or like I want to write something where Jeremy plays bass clarinet and Matt plays prophet. Like so it starts from different points and it's like multi-pronged all the time.
Thinking about your elements and your things that are available.
Yeah.
And then choosing a mix that's interesting to you and going from there.
Right.
Let's hear Alchemy Melt with Tilt. Alchemy Melt with tilt, not on tilt.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so a couple of observations for me that also come from having heard you talk about your process. Just the writing sounds like it's coming from improvisation, and the improvisation sounds like it's coming from the writing. And I'm sure that's one of the goals of it, is to remove those boundaries. But when you write these really complex scores, are you already thinking in advance what's going to happen in the improvisation, or?
Sometimes and sometimes not. Sometimes we figure out how to improvise on it in a completely different way than I would have thought of while writing it.
But it's always structurally based, the improvisation. It sounds to me like
sometimes it's totally free. Sometimes it is on
there's
structures.
the rare moment where it's free.
Well, on Alchemy Melt, the section, so there's 3 composed sections. Mm-hmm. Actually, they're all completely free, other than like the transition moments where you're, and that's still free because you can kind of get into it anyway.
Right. It's free within a framework.
Right. But we often are playing the material from the tune in the free sections. I mean, really, it's still kind of an old school approach. You play the tune and you improvise with the material of the tune.
Right.
It's just the material's pretty different.
And also the way you use the material is different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess.
It seems like that's part of your process. Would that be fair to say? I mean,
sure, totally.
In a way, it's like super integrated more than a lot of composers in the fact that some of the ways you're coming up with the compositional elements are based on your improvised ideas.
Yeah.
And what you're improvising is purely based on the materials you've written without any formal instructions on how to use those materials.
Yeah.
So going back and forth between so-called improvising and so-called composing, it's not as stark of a contrast in practice.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you have to have like very special people to play it.
Yeah,
right?
Well, fortunately, I'm surrounded by them here.
Jeremy Viner, Matt Mitchell, Adam Hopkins.
Yeah.
You also play vibes on the record.
A little bit.
Some of it's overdubbed, some of it is live.
Yeah.
But you also did some electronics and pre and post production, right?
Yeah, like for instance, the end of Alchemy Melt there, I programmed in Finale as and like exported it as MIDI, and then Matt took that content, kept the content the same, but kind of crafted the sounds. So Matt's really like the electronics person.
And it seems to come and go and sometimes gets a little like it sounds like it's wandering away from the specific pre-composed element and then wandering back.
Yeah. So in the end of Alchemy Melt, there's sort of a pattern to the rhythmic material, and it's basically is increasing the subdivisions. If we're going to talk technically about it, it's sort of it's
say that again. Increasing the subdivisions.
It's so that like the backbeat, like there's a backbeat that stays the same, and then the subdivisions gradually change from 5s to 6s to 7s to 8s to 9s. It actually goes like 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 8. And then the next one that it would be happens in the electronics section in that coda. Like, it sounds really crazy, but it's still the same pattern. It's just crazy because the subdivisions are getting so fast, and it's more...
It's the same numerical procedure, but now the computer's handling it.
Exactly. Just sort of like, this could continue forever. This could just keep going.
And something that would be very, very difficult to physically perform, but that the computer can kind of handle.
Yeah.
No problem.
Sure, yeah.
Wow, that is very cool. Is that... Well, I mean, it brings me to the question of technology. I mean, when you're writing, how much are you using the computer at the beginning of the process? Or would you say it starts on paper and then gets entered in and then gets messed around with?
The only capacity that I use a computer for is notating in Finale, and sometimes if I want to record something and then transcribe it, I'll use Audacity. Or I mean, these days I'll do it on my. It's not really a smartphone. I have a flip phone, but I have like an old smartphone.
It's smart enough.
It's smart enough to record my terrible singing and stuff. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
You record your singing and then you transcribe it.
Sometimes this is not a normal compositional process for me. It's just like maybe once every 10 tunes I'll sing something against a metronome so I can focus on how it feels. Mm-hmm. And then I'll like think about where I'm actually placing the beats against the metronome after the fact. Yeah. So that helps. I mean, that's kind of where some of the rhythms come from a lot.
From vocalizing
against a
singing.
Metronome.
Yeah.
So it comes from something that you're feeling, but then how do you actually notate the feel of it?
Wow. And that's and your charts are. Is it Finale you're using?
Yeah.
Or the notation is pretty intense. We may post some on the website. We may not. If you give us your blessing, we'll see if we can post a page or two. But I'm almost curious about this. Is that notation coming at the end of the process? Or is that part of the process?
It's part of I notate stuff as I go. I mean, I do varying amounts of sort of pre-composed work, just manipulating stuff. But I'm always kind of, I'm notating throughout the process usually.
So jotting first in the notebook, but then as it becomes firmed up, starts going in Finale.
Exactly,
and then you would work on it with that. Like you might play along to a Finale sequence as it's getting notated, or?
Once I'm going into Finale, I kind of... Well, it's different every time, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, fair enough.
And sometimes it's like if I don't have staff paper around, like if I'm traveling, it's like direct brain to Finale. Like Unreasonable Optimism.
Entering it in.
Yeah, I remember that. Like that one was just... Like I just had my computer, so I was just going.
Wow. Interesting. You have this project called Snark Horse where... I guess it's you and Matt are doing the writing?
Yeah.
And you told me that all the pieces are 1 bar long.
Yeah, although we might stop telling people that because it sounds too gimmicky and it doesn't really matter. And
I thought you were going to say like Twitter, you were going to extend it to 2 bars.
Oh, yeah. Did somebody say that on Twitter?
No, I just thought of it. It used to be 140 characters, now it's 280.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But I've been talking to Matt about this project for some years because we travel together.
Right.
But I like the idea of 1 bar, and you haven't recorded it yet, but I'm curious to hear it.
Yeah.
It's a very different kind of process, right?
Yeah. It's kind of cool because if it's only 1 bar...
Yeah.
You can kind of get away with anything if you're repeating it enough. Because if you repeat it enough, it starts to sound normal. It's like its own groove. It's almost like you're making the listener practice the music with you over and over if you're looping a bar. Wow. So if it's really complex, you're going to be able to hear it and process it because you're hearing it over and over enough.
Right.
But we're not just... for anyone.
You're also improvising.
Yeah, we're improvising, and we play with all these different people that will... pick out inner voices and find different things going on within it. And we're pretty free with them. Sometimes the bars have forms within themselves, or we'll like alternate between 2 bars. Like we'll put them together to make a bigger piece, or we'll just improvise in and out of them. We'll pair them. We'll put them in groups of different numbers of bars. So we try to like make different form possibilities in the bigger sense of the set.
I'd like to see a Snark Horse rehearsal.
Oh, yeah. Usually, a lot of the time, someone just comes over and it's like half an hour and we just play through them a little bit and we don't improvise that much because we play with people we've improvised with already a lot. So that aspect is always all right.
I had that band with Susie Ibarra and Mark Rebo where we played a piece called New Sanctuary, and the pieces it was 1 line. So it was like 8.5 by 11 letter size paper, and each piece was one staff length, and so that was translating to different numbers of bars and different amounts of material.
Nice.
And I found that, it was really fun, but it was also, it sounds to me like maybe a little more material than you guys are dealing with, which, is an admirable limitation. But at the same time, enough that maybe it was more challenging because we sort of we couldn't just play it over and over again.
Right.
It was like we had to get in and play it a few times and get out and go do something and find where it was leading us to.
Yeah.
And so that was a part of my writing process, was how can I give just enough information to, give somebody a hint of infinite pathways forward.
Yeah.
Is that how you guys work on it, or?
It is sort of like the thing with just enough information to get to something more interesting in the improvising than if you were giving zero information. It's also the challenge, the 1 bar challenge is also interesting of itself. It really just started with Matt and I sending bars back and forth. It was this funny thing. Like, he wrote a bar of music called Slarm Biffle or something totally silly, and then I sent something back that I like, and then it's kind of like
form do you send them in? Is it
just like emailing a PDF or an MP3 or something? Like,
so sometimes audio, but sometimes just
or sometimes both, so you can
score.
Hear it and see it.
Wow, sounds fun.
Yeah.
And your studio is pretty close to Matt's.
Yeah, that's true.
You guys play together a lot. It's great. I hadn't heard Dustin Carlson's record that you played on, and you sent me a track, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Let me play a little bit of that. So what's the name of the album?
Air Ceremony.
Air Ceremony, and this track is called For Your Safety and Convenience.
Yeah.
Dustin Carlson. So that's Dustin Carlson's record. He's the guitar player, For Your Safety and Convenience. And that's just one of the side musician things you're involved in now. You talk about improvisation without limitations. I saw it in an interview you gave. Oh. And I thought it was interesting because it's, always one of the things that we think about. And so many different kinds of limitations, and I've always been of the mind that we should be seeking out new sorts of limitations in order to grow past them.
Yeah.
You feel like when you're playing on all of these side musician projects that that's part of the challenge?
I think I play with a lot of like-minded musicians where that's a common goal we all have, is to be free no matter what the music content is, as far as difficulty or form or those kinds of things.
Well, also style, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
And by style, I mean sort of, glancing references to genre or tradition or lineage or heritage.
Yeah, like not having any gaps, like kind of being able to do anything, maybe. Is that what you mean as far as like with styles?
I think so. I mean, I it's interesting because you're playing in this new project of mine, and we'll be doing some touring together. And I had heard you play in a number of situations, and the music that I'm writing is not like anything I've ever heard you do. And then when I gave it to you, I was sort of like apologetic, like, I'm sorry, it's the music is really simple. But at the same time, I feel like that sort of was the thing that made me want to invite you in, was this, here's another challenge of getting past a way of doing something that's different.
Yeah, that's
seemed like, if anyone, you would be up for it.
Totally, of course. And I think it'll be cool as we play more to like play the tunes. I'm sure they'll go all different places. They're
going to open up, yes. Yeah. But I mean, Dustin's music is also pretty challenging, musicianship-wise, to go back to that word.
Sure.
Why? I don't want to like put you guys in a scene, but
yeah. I mean, Dustin, I think he's just writing what he's hearing. I know he kind of writes. I think he writes at his instrument a lot, and I think he is singing some of the stuff as he's thinking of it. Like, I know it's definitely there's an ear component with him that's really strong. I mean, he has that way about everything. Like, he learned all these monk tunes, and we played them on a gig, and I was really into the way he was playing them, and he was like, oh yeah, I learned them all completely by ear. And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. You have these internalized, and I think that kind of approach it's still in his more complex music. Like, it's coming from a place where he's hearing it and feeling it. It's internalized,
yeah.
Yeah, but he's also trying stuff to push himself and open up his ears.
Is he giving you written charts?
Yeah, we're definitely...
Yeah. And I noticed you write charts for yourself, too.
The thing I showed you that had a notated drum part?
Yeah.
So there's 2 tracks on Mannequins that have that. Most of the time I don't do it, but in those cases I had a specific reason. One was on Cardiac Logic, because it had to line up with the electronic version. I had to play the exact same thing.
I see.
It's programmed for it to like mess with the crossfade.
Right.
So there's like little reasons like that when it makes sense.
Where you write it and then you're able to sight read it and play it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that. I can't read my own music, and I play it from memory because I can't read it, and I rarely write a part for myself.
Yeah.
Because I just find it's too difficult to be reading it and making the music at the same time. Only in my own stuff.
Sure.
I'm happy to read other people's
It is,
music.
I sometimes, even with really complex music, I'll try to memorize it just so I can have my brain 100% in the listening mode while I'm playing.
That thing that you showed me would be very, very difficult to memorize, right?
Yeah, I mean,
because it was just
there's a point where it's familiar enough where you don't have to think about it too much. You're just kind of looking at it, and it's autopilot enough, the reading process, that you're listening just as much. So if I'm not memorizing something, I'm always still trying to be in that place, and that's a skill in itself, just to be able to read but not be thinking about that aspect.
Yeah,
to really have your head in the, like, you're improvising and making music place.
My favorite example of that is always Joey Barron playing a really tricky John Zorn piece and then realizing after the fact that he was looking at the wrong chart.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
That's sight reading for me. Yeah. I think that's really interesting to have that relationship with somebody else's music as well as with your own, and those challenges musically that you're talking about. I don't want to say that there's a scene, but you're also playing on Matt Mitchell's projects, several of them, one of them, A Pouting Grimace. We're going to hear a track. There's this new band that I haven't heard yet that I can't wait to hear that you're playing on. And Matt Mitchell, he friend of the pod. I interviewed him some years back for this series, and it was interesting hearing him talk about his music. I don't know if I would say that the procedures are similar or not, but the complexities and the challenges sound like of a piece. Am I off base on that?
We yeah, when Matt composes, a lot of the time he tells me every step that's happening because he's excited about it, and he gets really over caffeinated, and it's really
Sounds
really
good.
fun. It's like, oh yeah, I took this and I transposed it up a minor second, and then I took the left hand and I transposed it this way, and then I took the rhythms from this, and I'm like, oh wow, it's just like 100 steps of pre-composing materials. But yeah, so sometimes there's similar stuff that I do, and sometimes it's totally different. So. It's a mixture.
Right, but in terms of, the metric rubs that are going on in the
we're
music.
into a lot of the same rhythmic material. That's just like a common thing that we're both into. We'll like shed polyrhythms together and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and with Kim
I hear
Cass,
that on
too.
the scene. Right, Kim Cass.
Yeah.
Other people writing. I mean, Dan Weiss's music is very polyrhythmic.
Yeah, a lot of people are using it. Specifically, we'll actually like practice polyrhythms together though. Like as a trio or a duo sometimes.
Yeah. Cool. Let's play a little bit of Matt's record from A Pouting Grimace. This is Brim. So that's Matt Mitchell's record, A Pouting Grimace, and the piece is called Brim, and Kate Gentile is playing drums, and we're still talking about music here, and wondering if there's anything that we forgot to mention as we went along.
Yeah, I guess we were talking about like different paths people take and how people make things work now, and Adam Hopkins, the bass player on my record, Mannequins, just started a label, and I think like stuff like this is happening more and more as people try to figure out how to put their music out.
Amen.
And Dustin's record that you played that track from
Air
is
Ceremony.
on it. It's Out of Your Head Records, and he's got a really cool setup going with all the records coming with like stickers and special art features, and
This is Adam Hopkins running this label.
Yeah.
Out of Your Head Records. Is it outofyourheadrecords.com?
Probably.
Okay, well,
I'm sure
yeah,
it's
people
the
can find
first
it.
thing that will come up if you search for Out of Your Head Records. But
That sounds great. Are they doing vinyl releases too, or?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, check it out.
Cool new label.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the way it's going. I was really impressed when I saw Mannequins on Bandcamp, how clear and well put together it was, and worth the visit.
Oh yeah, I mean that was me. That wasn't Speed doesn't design the.
Regardless,
Yeah.
I mean, Skirl is the platform, and
Yeah.
you were the one who put that thing up, and I think that's just the way this music is getting sustainably documented and released.
Bandcamp is kind of the place now.
Glad to hear you say that.
in my opinion.
Everybody, Greenleaf is big in Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And and it is, and it's community. It's bringing people together that are interested in seeing this go on, creative music and musicians, and have a sustainable way of doing it. And it's the ultimate answer to somebody that asks you why you're not particularly fond of Spotify.
Oh yeah.
So as far as Mannequins, is that a band? Is that the name of a band? Is there going to be a new Kate Gentile record?
Yeah, the Mannequins is that band, but the next project is with Kim Cass on bass. That's sort of an extension of the same kinds of things, like music for a quartet, and that'll probably get recorded late this year or next year.
And you're still writing the music right now? Or?
Yes, I mean there's a lot written so far, but there's a lot more coming. So it'll be probably a bigger project.
Bigger, more musicians, you mean? Or bigger,
Probably
longer, more
multi-disc
content?
type of thing. I'm not sure exactly what yet, so I won't.
But it will be under the name Mannequins?
No, it'll have a different name. I don't want it.
I see.
If I kept it the same, it would sound like I fired Adam or something, and he's one of
So
my favorite bass players. So
Yeah, man, Adam. So,
You know.
Kate Gentile Quartet.
it's
Something like that.
I'll probably call it something, but I
Yeah.
don't have a name for it yet.
Okay.
But I like naming
good.
things. I like
Yeah.
giving something a name.
Things have names. Yeah. Things have names.
Something that's even harder to pronounce than Gentile.
So we'll be touring together. You touring with Matt a little bit, I think. Other things going on? What's happening?
The immediate future.
And this is January 2019, so we'll timestamp this. But
Oh yeah. I don't know. When does
if
this?
you're
when
if
does
you're
this
listening
air?
to this in 2020, hopefully you have a new president and other things have changed.
Yes.
But you'll just have a place to put whatever Kate is about to tell us about her.
Yeah, I'm doing a 3 nights in a row at iBeam in May.
Great.
Exact dates. I think it's 22 to 24. I'll have it on my website as it gets
Awesome.
closer.
iBeam in Gowanus.
And that'll be all new music with my quartet. And in the immediate future, Snark Horse is playing at the Jazz Gallery next week on the 19th.
Okay.
That January 19th. I don't know when this airs.
I'm hoping that this will be out a few days before then. If it's not, I apologize. But all of these dates, kategentile.com, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great music. Thank you so much for making the time to talk about it.
Thanks so much for having me do this, Dave.
Putting so much energy and heart and dedication into the work. It's just amazingly inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to playing too.
Yeah, likewise.
Great. So we're going to go out with this piece that's called Otto, comma, on Alien Shoulders. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Dave.